Welcome in. Today's guest is Jonathan Burrows. He is a fantasy author and his first book has just recently come out. It is part of the Phoenix War saga. The title, The Phoenix, A Realm of Cassin novel. So, first off, I just want to say I love your cover.
Thank you. I am very proud of my cover. I did not do it. I have this wonderful artist that I live with called my wife. Her name is Monique. We call her Momo. And she designed not only that cover, but she's already designing the cover for the Nameless as well. And I love the work that she does.
Yes, yes. Praise to her because she did an amazing job. And that was the first thing, yeah, I remember seeing on Facebook when on your page was your cover. And I just I fell in love with that cover. And so I had to make a point to say that on the first part of the show.
And the only direction I gave her was literally, I'm like, I want this book to feel like it's been sitting on the shelf for 100 years and you just found it. And she's like, I got you. And that's what she pulled out and produced. And then the only problem we have is with measurements. It's a little cut off on our first editions, but on
Yeah.
our second editions, we're going to get that squared away. But it's such a beautiful piece on its own that I'm so proud of it. And I'm very proud of her and love my wife very
Yes.
much.
And I agree. She did well in hitting the spot when you wanted, something that was more classic looking. And I mean that was my thought when I saw it. It was like that is a classic book cover right there. And you do not see that often enough. And it's beautiful.
Thank you.
All right. So let's talk about inspiration and spark. What influenced you to start this series off?
So when I was a young warthog, um, I I was a role player on a site called Gaia Online, and I had a role play character called Blue. And this is literally the backstory of Blue. Now, I split that character, and his core personality became several characters throughout the story. But several of the characters are a role playing character. And so that's kind of the basis of it. And then past that, I started writing a book that was basically a redux of Redwall. And like, I'm a big fan of Redwall. I love the series. But with Redwall being a great thing that's already happened, I pulled back and then I started this series. And that was in 2008. And so I finally got it out.
It's a long process of creating this book, creating this world. Um, I mean, I haven't read it yet. But tell me how, the process, because 2008 is quite a while ago. And so you started this journey a, a long time ago. And so yeah, kind of tell me about that.
So I started in 2008, just kind of playing around with it and like building the world out and building the characters out. And then my daughter was born on Fallout Day. She's born the day the bombs fall in 2013. And so when she was born, I'm like, I'm actually going to finish this book. And so I buckled down and I finished the book and I got it off. And then I got to the editing stage and like, not my strength. Um, I like the ideas, but an editor is not what I do well. So it took me a while to edit, and then I made the unfortunate mistake of getting it connected with an ex-girlfriend, and like whenever I touched it, I would think of her. And then actually my wife, she really encouraged me and really pushed me and really helped me do everything I needed to get it to this point. And so the first book's dedicated to my daughter because she's what pushed me to finish the novel. And the Nameless is actually going to be dedicated to my wife because she's the one who actually got it out there.
Oh, well, you know what? It's good, good for her, that she was such a strong force and, really supported you. So,
Yeah,
yeah, you're very lucky.
I am. I am blessed beyond measure. She makes my cup overflow.
So how did the characters kind of first introduce themselves to you? You know, everybody kind of has that. Well, they just kind of popped in my head one day and shouted at me to, I needed to write them down. How did,
Well, so I want to openly admit that I'm half mad. Um, one of my favorite memories of my grandmother is her apologizing to the sausage while she was cooking it because she said it was screaming, but she was going to cook it for her meal. And so, like, that level of mental health issues is in my family for generations. And so,
no
as I
judgment
told,
here.
yeah, but as I told one of my cousins, I'm like, I took those and I gave them personalities and I separated them off, and now they have distinct behaviors, and that's really how I did it. So, Tezalant was the mainstay of Blue, which was my main character. And I've kind of been connected with him. He's a little bit of a self-insert in that regard because he's like my first role play character when you're first figuring it out and you know you're doing it. And then like the waterfall comes from that time. The fact that he's a phoenix comes from that time. And all those come from that. And then I separated part of him off to make another character named Rolvin Wiro. And he does some things. He's not a redeemed person, but he came off and he ended up making another character, Usris, and Usris only exists because Rolvin said he didn't want to kill him when I wrote him specifically to be killed. And so that's how I got a character in here. And then the final one, the doctor, I actually got permission from headmistress Peggy of the Church of Satan to include Anton LaVey as a member of
Okay,
the hero party because she thought it would be funny and she thought he would find it funny. And
right.
so I'm like, well, what should I call him? And she's like, just call him the doctor. Those who know will know. And so those are my four, that's my hero party is those four.
Okay. Um, so with your, you were done talking, right? I didn't just enter.
No, no, no,
Okay.
no. You did.
Okay, good. I didn't, it sounded like maybe you were getting ready to say something else. And I was like, oh shoot, I'm sorry.
No, no, you're
Uh,
doing wonderful.
okay, good. Um, I know you just kind of gave me a little about your grandma and her inspiration. Is there anything as far as like a specific setting or a real life event that kind of was anchored into this story? I mean, I realize it's fantasy, but um did you ever kind of manipulate something that really happened and put it in there?
So, so the only thing that I've kind of manipulated and put in there, if I'm being honest, is um, I feel that the world, like I tried to take the world and put it in a second world fantasy and have it make sense. And so, like, one of my core themes that I've always tried to write the book with is there are no mustache curling, like hardcore, that is the villain. It's responses to the situation and what's happening. And it's everyone trying to do what they think is best, and that's setting up the conflicts. And so,
Right.
like, don't get me wrong, people do monstrous things in my book. I am sorry for the end of Act One. As my daughter said, she got into the car and went, "You did some things," and I'm like, I did do some things." Um, but that that's just something I had to do for the story and the sake of the story. I felt.
Right. I mean, depending on the kind of story and the storyline, I mean, there are things that are unavoidable. And, when it comes to war, uh, you know, uh, unfortunately, lots of atrocities happen during war. And, and it's unavoidable as far as, including it into a story because, I mean, that's realistic. I mean, that's kind of the reality of it, whether right or wrong, that's just kind of goes into it. So, I mean, I get that you would have to kind of write some stuff in there that maybe make other people uncomfortable or even yourself uncomfortable at times. So, I mean, I can't imagine that George Martin, who, wrote Game of Thrones, or George R. R. Martin, yeah, that's right, wrote Game of Thrones. I can't imagine that everything that he wrote was, yeah, I'm in support of all this. It's just kind of par for the course. And the kind of the time period in which it's set in, and or George R. R. Martin, yeah,
George R. R.
whatever,
Martin.
yeah, huh.
You got it. It's George R. R. Martin.
Okay, good, because I was like, I know the name, and it's like, did I say it right? Yeah, that's
You
okay,
got it.
because that's my chaos, and it is 9 o'clock. It's past my bedtime, so you got to just kind of work with me here.
Yeah. And I would
uh,
say, like, as far as the George R. R. Martin comparison goes, I try to write grim hope. Um, I see there's a lot of trauma in my book, and there's a
mhm,
lot of healing and like coping with trauma and like how you come from the things that happen. Because like Tessalent is technically the prophecy named Chosen One, but he does not get a typical Chosen One arc. It's not the, he's the one that's going to save the kingdom. Um, as the matter of fact, for the gods, he's the one that's going to kill them. And
right,
so their fear response is part of what drives the story forward. And it's how multiple levels can fail while still allowing it to go on. And then the world continues to go on. Like,
right,
it's not something where you just get to have the world pause because you're undergoing some grim tragedy. And
right.
it's Heslint's the one that goes through grim tragedy. But he gets to he he eventually stands on his own, and the Phoenix is just 6 days of a 70-year story. So there's a lot left for Teslint to grow and for Usris to grow and Rolvin to grow and the Doctor to grow.
How many books are you planning to have in this series? You have any idea? Or is just kind of winging it
So
at this point?
I'm a chronic pantser. I know my epilogues. I'm writing for my epilogues. I have some very heavyweight epilogues that I'm really proud of, and that's my goal. What I'm writing, I don't want to have a situation where I work on a book and work on a book and work on a book and it doesn't come out and then I release just a giant tome. I write with a very basic thought of I get to 80,000 words and I find the next exit. And so that's how I wrote The Phoenix. The Phoenix is 84,000 words. I got there, I found the exit, boom. And the Nameless, the next book, literally picks up right where the book leaves off with no gap. Um, and that's how I want to write my series. So I don't know exactly how many books they're going to be, but I know all the arcs. I know the main points in the arc. I know what my pressure points and what's building towards and what's all that going on. But as far as like how many books are going to be in the series, I kind of expect this to be at least 1 million words. And at that point, it's 12 and a half, 13 books. And
Okay,
anything else I write over is going to be over.
nice. I'd be like a wheel of time series going on here with all the books.
Well, and then the other thing is if I finish off
Mm,
the story and people want more stories within the realm of Casson, I'm happy to do it. I mean, the book The Phoenix is starts in the year 5600. So like in that century. So it's very old. It has a lot of history. And then I also know the future up to about 500 years into the future after the book. So there's a lot in there that we could write about and have fun writing. I just started with the Phoenix because I felt like it was the core story that I needed to tell, and the rest are kind of I get to tell.
Uh, and kind of apart from your Phoenix series, do you have any ideas for, any other kind of world building, a different universe you would kind of want to go into? Or is this is what you're focused on, this is what you're going to do for right now? And
So this is
yes.
definitely what I'm focused on. This is what I'm doing for right now. I do have an idea for a story, just because of I I was enjoying all of the discussion about AI and books and like how AI and books works and all that.
Hmm.
And like, the the way that it's used and everything and how it's done. And I had an idea for a book where I wrote the protagonist that's in a sci-fi world trying to overthrow an AI. And then I would
Okay.
have an AI write the AI parts to fight my protagonist. And like that would go back and forth. And like that project kind of interests me just because it'd be fun to like play with the program and just see how we could write that story with me having no idea how that story is going to be written, just
Right.
being like starting here and like what's going to happen next. um that sounds fun to me, but
Right.
my main focus and like I'm already 43,000 words through the Nameless, so I'm over halfway there, and that's my focus is just continuing this story. And I want to get through it, and because I know it's going to be a while, I'm working on
Yes, maybe your 10-year project plus.
it.
Um, so in this book, um, was there a particular scene that was more difficult for you to get right, to get onto paper that, is there something that you struggled with more than any of the other scenes?
So there is a scene that had me struggling and had me crying, and it even stopped my daughter while she was reading it for a little while. And it's the end of Act One, the beginning of Act Two. And it's really heavy and it's really hard for me to write through. I would say make it there and enjoy it and like have that enjoyment of it. But it was a heavier scene to write. Um, we'll just talk about it. Why not? We'll have fun. What ends up happening is people die. And in one of those, let's see, how am I going to say this? So at the end of Act One, an assassin company ends up making it to Teslin's home with an order to kill his father's family. And Teslin only survives because he has black hair. His father is a magi of the Sky Clan, and so
Mhm.
is all of his siblings, and they have white hair. It's just something that's inherent in their magical blood that they all
Right.
just have white hair for their life. So Teslin is sent out to get wood, and the assassins who are like staging to go into the house watch this kid with black hair walk out, and they literally go, "Black hair is not the Sky Clan, right?" Like they check amongst themselves, and they're like, "Yeah, no, like white." And so they let him leave because they assume he's not a part of the family.
Mm.
And the family gets got, unfortunately. And the next scene is the Death Magi Grail guiding the souls of the family, but they only find Gilbra, the 6-year-old daughter,
Mm.
and none of the other souls come out. And even Grail is like, "This is weird. I don't know why these souls aren't here." And it ends up being a very important chapter, even though it's a one-off chapter for him. It's an important chapter to the overall story. And it was really hard to write because I was writing it when my daughter was just born. And
Mm.
like the idea of writing a young girl who just passed away, even though I go out of my way to make death in my world very kind, um, it was still hard to do.
Right. Means you kind of related that to, you know, your own daughter just being small, and yeah, that would be hard. Uh, if you wouldn't mind, would you read a little bit from your book?
I I will read the whole excerpt. I normally only read part of it, but we will go with it. This is the very first thing that you touch in the book. This is the prologue. This is Himmel's hidden account. Over 5 grand cycles ago, we were born. My brothers and sisters and I came into the world with the same blessing and curse of immortal life. For all time, none of us had ever truly tasted the bittersweet fear of death. We knew we could die. These physical bodies were just as breakable as any other. They could bleed, they could burn, they could be destroyed. Over those cycles, we created many wonderful and terrible things. At first, there were only three kinds of beings that mattered: the gods, the mortals, and the daemons. The daemons, rapidly evolving and constantly changing. The gods, immortal and constant, had remained the same for the entirety of time. And the mortals, caught in the middle somewhere between them both. 4 grand cycles ago, we faced the full might of the daemon armies we had allowed, through our own hubris and youth, to fester and grow rancid. In that war, we learned the limits of our bodies and the weight of our immortality. With Jesus captured, Warmis's bloodlust went unchecked. The fires of his rage were stoked by the fear of the other gods. None of them wished to be weak beside his newest creation, the engine built for water magic, the Magi. 3 grand cycles ago, we forced the daemons underground. I've often wondered if it was my sister's cry for or my brother's bloodlust that finally pushed the daemons underground, clearing the land for mortals. We could not have done it alone. The Magi were fashioned to hone and focus the world, to make it stronger, and their gifts gave them terrible grace in battle. Each god and goddess shaped a clan in their own image, their own branch and own way of rule. We did not understand then that we had traded one threat for another. The Magi were less openly cruel than the daemons, but they carried the same ambition and the same hunger to be the strongest. To keep them from rising against us, each of us granted the mongoose of our clan a great gift. They argued endlessly over which gift carried the most honor, but in truth, none of them added more beauty to the world than the phoenixes Jesus gave to the sky clans. Those birds brought a kind of peace to the Magi, and under that peace, mortals flourished at a rate the daemons have never imagined. Soon, the mortals forgot their old foes and the terrors that had once fallen on their lives. Instead of uniting as a race, they turned on each other, squabbling, dividing, warring. Kingdoms rose and fell within a grand cycle or two. Only one has endured since the daemons were driven below. They shun magic and the power it offers, most out of fear, some out of reverence. The mortals say magic belongs only to the gods, and they want no part of it. During this winter, in the 5123rd cycle, one of the children touched by my curse, an oracle, had heard a whisper of grave consequence. None of the gifts, or of all the gifts, none shall be turned upon its master. One shall rise, a phoenix, as moonless as the night sky against the gods. They shall know the taste of death, as the doors will open to them that have never been opened before. The old one, the great destroyer and bringer of chaos, shall be found once more, and they shall march forward upon a burning blade, shall they land from inside the walls. That whisper began a great purge. The book my father gave me, The Realms of Casson, spoke of this time. I am not sure if this was truly part of his plan, but as the phoenixes fall, I find those words already written. I shudder to think what the blank pages ahead will one day reveal, but as far as I can see, my father's will has been done. In this great sorrow that I must hide this entry from my normal tomes of history. It must remain here in the temple of time, so no one can know what truly happened in these coming years. A great plague has settled on the phoenixes, a plague my kind has never known. Today is the beginning of the great plague of fear, and I am afraid the world may never be the same again. From Hamil's Head and Account, Cycle 5123.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
When you were writing that specific scene, did it always sound exactly like that in your head, or has the scene and the characters have they evolved since you first conceptualized it?
So Hamel's been locked into his shape pretty much the whole time I've had him. Um, he's been the god of death, and I haven't done much changes to him or much shifts in his personality or how he's structured. Um, and I've really enjoyed how he is and the way he works and everything, and I've kept it. The prophecy, the one phoenix shall rise, that has been written the same way since I started the story, and that's one of my North Stars. So my epilogues are another one. That's the light I'm heading towards. and the prophecy is the one I'm running by. I know every part of the prophecy. I know how it plays out, and it's really fun. But that I I find that that chapter is more important as written than playing with it and messing with it a lot.
Right.
I, I I admit that when I write things, I tend to write them, and once they're written, I don't really go back and fight them. I'll go back and reread them to make sure it flows. But if I've written part of the story out, it's I see it kind of as in the past. I can edit it to make it more readable, but I rarely change things. The only time I've ever changed anything in my book is I realized I had my characters' hands tied, and then they were free, and then they were tied again, and that was just bad writing. You can't have that.
I think we've all been there, found an inconsistency somewhere when we're going back and reading through stuff, and you're like, wait a minute, that is not, they're wearing a different shirt, or they're not wearing the same thing, or they're not in the same position, or it's something small that
Yeah.
is usually that little thing, and that you'll probably miss it, but the reader is going to catch it, and then like
I already have some of those between my daughter, my roommate, and everyone else having been like, question about this. And I'm like, well, that's wrong. And they're like, but that's what you wrote. And I'm like, oh, I mean, doesn't change that it's wrong. Doesn't change
right.
that. I'll fix
Like,
that in post.
I don't know, but never. We'll just ignore that that's there.
And what is it? And the wise words of Randy Marsh. That's not how we're remembering it, Stanley.
That's right. So a little bit about your journey into getting published. Now, you are an indie author. You independently published, right?
Yes.
Did you ever pursue traditional publishing, or small press, or somewhere in between?
So I did send out query letters when I first finished my book, and no one picked it up. And then I'd been so long since I'd really read fantasy. I did this really dumb thing where I stopped reading fantasy because I didn't want to be taking ideas from everyone else and I wanted to focus on mine. And so I shifted to sci-fi. And I love sci-fi. I read a lot of sci-fi, but I stopped reading fantasy. And so here I am 15 years later, and they're like, who are your comps? And I'm like, what are comps? And that wasn't a good fun time. And so I kind of tried to find my comps and I was having trouble doing it. And I just got to the point where I felt I had a completed manuscript and my art's talking. I'm really good at just talking to people. And so I wanted to get it out and published and it's, oh, excuse me, out and published and in a space where people can find it. And I put the cart before the horse on this first book. Like there's a couple of things where I probably should have waited. If I would have known, I would have. But I'm still proud of what I pulled off, and so I'm a KDP independent author.
Well, and that kind of leads into my next question about your biggest oops when it comes to self-publishing, because we've all had it.
I wish I would have known that there was a contest called UK Storyteller because I published my book literally 2 weeks before it started.
Ah, okay.
Like that was a big one. Um, Other than that, it's actually you want to know a secret to know if you have a first edition? It's really
Oh,
easy. You just flip to the back of the book and you read the books in this series because it says follow Teslin and her journey in the Phoenix War. Right there's a big whoops doodle. So that will be fixed eventually.
mhm. Yep. Okay. I think we've all have that moment when I first published my first book, When the Levee Breaks. Uh, it was it was originally picked up by a traditional publisher, and but the book was 190,000 words. I am a
Okay.
bloated, wordy person. You were talking about you cut off at like 80,000. And I was thinking, my books are like this, you could beat somebody up with them, right? And
Yeah.
so then they cut my book down to 100,000 words because they traditional publishers prefer first time authors having books that are under 100,000 words. So they had cut my book down, and uh and I ended up splitting up with them like 6 months later because they had made a lot of promises that they just weren't living up to.
Yeah.
And so then I ended up self-publishing. And my my big oops was that I had all of my book written out on Word, right? Double spaced. I didn't have it formatted like, you know, you have in the point 0.5 or 1.5 space in between, you have it double spaced, writing like you were in college. And so I published it that way. And it ended up being even more massive of a book because everything was double spaced. Uh-oh.
So
Well,
fun,
let me see.
funny thing you mentioned that. That's actually how mine is. And I did it because it's easy to read, and I want a book that's easier to read. And so
Right.
like that was an intentional choice, and that's kind of one of the cool things about being an independent published author is I chose to publish my book like that because it's easier to read. I'm like,
Mhm.
I could drop the font, I could make it smaller, I could make it less pages. And like if I made it the traditional, like what is it, like 10-point font with half a space in between each paragraph? Isn't that per
Yeah,
page?
something
This
pretty
book
close to that.
this book would shrink, but it'd be harder to read. And so, like, I kind of like flipping through pages. It feels good to go through a few pages and like get part of the book and feel the book like walking underneath you. And
Hmm.
so, like, I purposely did that. When I formatted it, I wanted it like that. And so
Yeah.
I, I didn't think that was a mistake. I thought it was like this is the choice we're making today. Um,
Well, then that's good because mine was not purposeful. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is not how I meant for it to look. And so that was my big oops moment, but you
okay.
did it intentionally. So, that's okay because that was a writer's choice.
My grandmother asked me, not my grandmother from my mother's side, not my father's side. Let's clarify that right now. But the grandmother from my mother's side went, "Why does your book look like this? This isn't how they normally go." And I'm like, "That's how I want it to look. Like it's where I want it to be. It's easier to read."
Well, and I mean, I can like there were people who were like, yeah, I like it better this way because it is easier to read that way. But for me, eh, you know, as a pretty avid reader, I was kind of like, it's just not the way I want it to look. I want it to look more, more the traditional way of looking. But yes, it absolutely is easier because you find authors with 1,000 page book, like Anne Rice, on her Mayfair Witches series. I had such a hard time getting through that. It was like 1,100 pages, and the writing was about this small,
Yeah,
going through everything. And so I don't need glasses to read, but I had to squint to kind of see
yeah,
and get everything. And that just like created more work to get through this 1,100 page book already.
yeah.
So, so yeah, I can definitely see the appeal of publishing and formatting it that way.
And it also is another reason I get to the 80,000 words and cut off because there's a 450-page book because of how it's formatted. You know, if it was
Right.
formatted normally, it'd probably be a 150, 200-page book, but it's much bigger because I format it in the way it's easier to read.
Right. Hey, dealer's choice, right?
I I'd like to think so until my publisher gets mad at me. But on that note, my publisher did talk to me about the semicolons in my chapter. Um, so if you look at my book, I'm really proud of this part. It's published by Tempest Fugit Oddities Publication. My
Mm-hmm.
wife actually is a licensed and bonded massage therapist, and her company is Tempest Fugit Oddities and Bodyworks. So that's a
Okay.
top company. And when she saw it for my chapters, I have like, let's just pull a random example, shall we? Uh Chapter 40, The Price of Protection. Between chapter 40 and the price of protection, I put a semicolon because I think it looks nice with a semicolon versus like a colon. And she told
Right.
me that's grammar that's wrong, grammatically. And I said, it's how I want it to look.
Well, then you know what? Who cares, right?
Yeah, that's the only argument I've had with my publisher so far. We've been on very good terms. We've been
Okay, well, that's good. That's good. Especially since you have to live with her and all. You never know
like,
what
see,
she might do in your sleep and all that.
she's a lovely woman, and I'm a deep sleeper, so that is something I'm concerned about. That
Hey, I understand it. Tell her if she ever needs any help or tips. I'm here to support.
I'll let her know. I'll tell her that your search history is already corrupted. We're authors. We
That's
write
right.
weird things about search history all the time.
Uh, so I write romantic suspense, and
Okay.
I love the tension building.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of how I get people to keep coming back to my work and keep wanting to read, until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. How do you in your genre keep the reader leaning in and coming back?
So I switch POVs like it's a problem. Um, I'm constantly flipping from one POV to another. When it starts, it gets like a little bit of steam under it. But like, if I'm being honest, in the second book, I'm writing three separate stories and just weaving them together as best I can. So I use that to kind of keep the pressure on the situation. So we'll have a couple of stories from like the hero party's perspective, and then we'll have a story from the god's perspective, and it'll be one of the divine. And that divine will put pressure back onto the story because it's a reminder of like what the stake is. And then we'll go to the assassin group, and the assassin group will be sitting there and setting up to do something while the rest of the people aren't even aware of it because that's how it works when you're doing it right. And so that constant pressure and the thing I use to build it is I change POVs. And so when you get comfortable with the character, I jump to another character and I run through another part of the story with their view for several reasons. Number one, it helps me with my there are no villains like we're twirling. It's easy to hate the guy that you never see his perspective, but like I give you chapters to sit through his perspective. And at the end, you might not agree with them, but you can at least be like, I kind of get where they're coming from. And
Right.
so that's something I want to do. Like Warmer Sis in the excerpt I read, it talks about his bloodlust. At one point in my book, he's playing with children, and the mothers are laughing and watching this god wrestle with their children, and like they're totally okay with it because he's not just the god of war and chaos who's constantly bloodthirsty. He also knows that children's play is chaos, and that's just as much of his pantheon as is going out onto a battlefield.
Okay. And when I like that, I always appreciate like the villain story. You get, their perspective on things because obviously people aren't, born bad necessarily, right? They have a story, they have a history of what has kind of caused them to become the person that they are. And and that's kind of neat, having that point of view on there because it gives you a better understanding of where they're coming from, because if you're only getting, the protagonist kind of perspective on everything, you don't really know what's going on in the inner workings of, the bad guy,
Yeah.
right? And and so I like that you're kind of including that point of view of that other, of the villain to give to to humanize them, I guess is the best way to say it. Um,
Well,
um,
and there are points where it's like, so, um, Rolvin, for instance, he's one of my hero party. He doesn't join the party till later. It's about third or 2/3 of the way through the book, third, 2/3, somewhere in between there, that he actually joins the hero party. And before that, he's a part of the antagonist group. Um, the only reason he even joins the hero party is the hero party shows up at the assassin's house because they're known for being able to do a good job. And they're like, hey, we need to hire protection. And they're like, we're on it. We'll protect you. Like, I don't care which way it goes as long as you pay me. And he's like, all right, I'll
Right.
pay you. And so they end up hiring Rolvin and Usris as protection for the Doctor and Teslin. And that ends up being an explosive incident very quickly because of some things that happens in the story and because of what Rolvin did in the story itself.
Right.
Um, and he's not a redeemed monster. He's not like I'm not ever trying to redeem his actions because while what he did was pretty abhorrent and abmoral and like not a great thing, um, I make death kind in my universe for a reason, and everyone knows the stages of death. So, like for instance, Rolvin doesn't see murder as a particularly abhorrent thing because he understands that it just transitions you to the death. And so, like that transition for him, he doesn't see it like he's ending your life. He sees it's like, I'm sorry, you're no longer here. Like you get to move on. You, good job, you made it to the end. Sorry that I'm your end, but you made it.
Hope you're going to a
Um,
better place.
yeah. Well, and so the I do you ever watch Robin Williams's What Dreams May Come?
That is my favorite movie.
That
My,
is one of the critical theories of my death universe.
okay.
Is that you really create the death that you live. And if you live a life that's worth having memories of, you'll
Mhm.
have a good part of your death. And so, like, there's no like the god of death Hamel and the death clan as a whole, their job is to guide the souls to the afterlife,
Mhm.
but they don't like sit in judgment. They don't sit there and go like, oh, well, you were kind of a jerk or you were really they literally just guide you to the afterlife, and your afterlife is based on what you can comprehend as a person. It's kind of like you know what, I'm going to spoil someone else's story. So Fate Stay Night, um at the end of that, when he gets his wish granted, it can only be granted in a way that he would have done normally. And so he was a man that would kill 100 to save 150. And so he ends up like going mad because his wish can't be granted because it'll just
Mhm.
kill off most of humanity, but they'll save the ones that are good. And so, like, that's kind of the same theory there is your death is what you bring to it.
Right. You just made me want to read your book even more just by bringing up that movie, What Dreams May Come, because that is literally my all-time favorite movie. And I love the concept, um, you know, behind it um and how he goes into hell to save his wife,
Yeah.
after she died. And it, just, that ability to save somebody else and just the world, the view of in heaven and hell and everything, and just how everything plays out, and how his children um were other characters in his life, and he had to figure out who they were in order to see them. And I love yeah, I am in love with that. And so you bringing that up and kind of saying that you kind of have that same concept in your book. Yeah, see, now I just have to read it because I have to see how how they kind of
So
play out together.
the let's get through it. So the arcs of the story is the Sky Clan, the Chaos Clan, and then we go through the rest of the clans that's through it. And in the Death Clan, that part of the arc, they actually get into it and they talk about how the realms are made and how it happens. And like one of the cool things about it is like, for instance, when you die, if you end up having a love in your life that you can't live without, you'll have their memory with you in the afterlife. And when they finally pass away, you then get to ask yourself if you want to include them in your afterlife or if they want to be included in your afterlife. And if they do, you guys get to be joined together and you get to share that afterlife. And if not, you end up keeping that memory fragment that you have. And so there's that kind of ability with it. And you can have a bad afterlife, but it isn't impossible for someone that loves you to come and find you and be like, hey, come on, come
Help you
come
find
be with me.
redemption.
Yeah, yeah, and even if it's not redemption, it's at least something closer to peace.
Right. Well, who's this?
This
Who,
is
who,
Chica. She, boop, boop.
well,
She got
aren't you a
she
cutie? Uh, so when you are writing, do you have a non-negotiable writing habit?
not really. I have written I have written in the back of a car while homeless. I have written while laying in bed next to my wife. I have written at the end of a 16-hour day. I have written at the end of everything. My only like close to non-negotiable thing I have as far as writing goes is I'm not going to write more than a chapter a day because I don't want my family to be that people who are like, well, I haven't seen him. He's working on his book. And like, I just
Yeah.
refuse that. So
Yeah.
that's my only real non-negotiable thing. Oh, okay, you can get down then. Uh, is that I'm not going to write more than a chapter a day because my family is worth more to me than finishing the
Right.
story.
And I think that's a good non-negotiable. So we've talked about um, the grit and the craft, and we've gotten to hear a piece of your world, your book's world. But who are you outside of being a writer?
I'm a really nerdy appliance repair tech who loves his wife and daughter. Um, like, let's see. Right now, my three most played games that I've played recently is I got to beta test the College Football 27 game. That was cool. I played Stellaris and I played what's my third Factorio. So like those are my time wasters for games. I run a 40K server for Crusades, but I haven't put a lot of time in that since I got into doing my book. Just I had to select something to scale down, and that was unfortunately what I selected to scale down. But I got some good admin in there, and I got some good people who are running it for me now, and so I know it's in good hands, and they're handling it for me. And then um, beyond that, I go to work every day and I come home and I spend as much time as I can with my family. I'm not an overly complicated man.
You know what? Sometimes simple really is the best thing.
Yeah.
All right, so back to kind of books for you as being a reader. Do you prefer the physical book, the e-reader, or an audiobook?
So let's give a shout out where shout out is due. Scott Sigler, amazing audiobook guy. Go and listen to him. Like top of the tier, cream of the crop. I really enjoy his work. He makes me want to do audiobooks. I've listened to his audiobooks. They are great. But I'm a paper guy. I like feeling the book. I like flipping it. I don't think I've ever read on an e-reader. It was so hard for me to read on my computer and go through and do the editing process. And now that I have a better understanding of it, I'm definitely just going to order an author's copy of my book before I get it published and then sit there and read through my book because it's a lot easier for me. And then that will be how I do my edits next time. Again, things you learn.
Right. And I agree with that as far as like the editing goes. I have a hard time reading off of my computer. I either need to print it off and have the papers in front of me or order like you said an author copy or a proof copy to go through and read over everything because I like I can sit there and I can type, but to go back and reread it, everything, I kind of get bored with it,
Yeah.
and I don't stay focused on it so much.
Well, and a lot of my readers, at least a lot of my early readers, I knew were going to be Kindle readers, and that's why I
Mhm.
released it as early as I did on Kindle because it was just easier for them to read it there. And
Right.
that's why I pay you is because they pay for it, and I wanted them to be able to read without having to do anything else.
Yeah. What was the last book that you read that made you say, I wish I'd written this?
Um, I'm actually really happy with my lane and my story. I don't have that pull. Like the last book I really read that I really enjoyed, that was great, was I reread one of the Redwall series, Long Patrol. But like I said earlier, I've been a bad reader, man. I am
Yeah.
such a bad reader.
Mm.
I enjoyed the Horse Heresy series from Warhammer, but there's like 600 of those damn books now, and I don't suggest that kind of addiction to anybody.
Right.
Um, like there's just so damn many of them. Um, I think, so I can give you a scene that I really wished I wrote, and it
Okay.
came out of the Fire book of Warhammer 40K, and the scene is Vulcan and Cruz are talking, and Cruz has spent the last months torturing his brother Vulcan. And he gives Vulcan his hammer back, and Vulcan's a blacksmith, and he's just this massive man. And he picks up his hammer and he tries to use the teleporter. And his brother's like, "You didn't think I'd be dumb enough to hand you a hammer with a teleporter in it, did you?" And he's like, "Yeah, but you want to know a little secret?" And he leaned in and he's like, "What's that?" And he goes, "It's still a hammer." And he just beats the hell out of him with the hammer. And like, that was just so funny to me that it's like, all right, I wish I wrote that line. That's a funny line. Um, but like, as far as a whole novel, um, I'm really proud of the world and the story I built. I'm really proud of the cultures and the dynamics I've built. Um, I may gloss over them, but like for instance, in my first book, there's a cowboy in my book because I just wanted to have the Duke in my book. I just thought it was funny to have John Wayne in the middle of a fantasy novel. 100% the
Right.
reason why he's there. Everyone else thinks he's weird. Like no one in this world goes like, "Well, that's totally there." They're like, "He's dressed weird. Why does he wear that funny hat? Like, why is he wearing chaps? What is this guy doing?" And it's like it's because I wanted John Wayne in my world, so it's funnier to me. And like that, I'm exceptionally proud of my world and my work and what I've done. And I don't, like I said, I stopped reading fantasy because I was scared of plagiarizing, and
Right.
I don't want to have another person's writing for me. Like, it's funny when I get the ads and they're like, "Do you want a ghostwriter?" It's like that's the last thing I want. Like, don't get me wrong, ghostwriters are valuable. I'm not saying that like the profession
Right.
is not something I would have, but it's at the same time, it's not something I want. I want to write my story, and I want when I want to put something down that's mine, and when I'm done, that's what I want to write, and that's what I want to share.
Totally respectable. All right. Well, I have had such a good time talking with you and getting to know you and your story. Um, I appreciate you sharing, your journey with me. Before we close, can you let the audience know the best place for everyone to find you online and more importantly, where they can grab copies of your books?
So right now, the best place to find me online is on either Goodreads or Facebook. I'm still building out more than that. Facebook, it's the Phoenix War. I believe it's the Phoenix War Saga. Or no, it's just the Phoenix War. Jonathan Burrows. I haven't updated that yet, but it's the Phoenix War, Jonathan Burrows. And then for my Amazon, it's Jonathan Burrows, A Realm of Castle novel, The Phoenix. If you look up The Phoenix, you'll get a bunch of books. If you look up Jonathan Burrows, you'll get that damn dancer from London. Um, it's a lot of authors have to become the best like person in their genre. I'm just fighting to be the best person with my name. That's my first goal. And like I know I won't be the better dancer. He's a ballet trained dancer from London. Like he is great. He's a damn good dancer, but I'm coming for him. All right. Like I will be the Jonathan Burrows. Um, but right now I'm not. So that would be the place to find me. Look for my wife's lovely cover. And that's the place that you'll find our story. And the next one's The Nameless, and it will be on Amazon as well, as of right now at least.
All right. Well, again, thank you for coming on the show and, being so candid with me and, just sharing everything. And I appreciate that. And I hope that we are able to chat again.
Oh, anytime. It was a pleasure being here. I'm happy to be back with Words That Flow, and I'm happy to be here being just WTF with you all day.
Sweet. All right. Well, you have a good rest of your evening,
I
and
will.
I will catch up with you on Facebook.
Sounds good. I'll hear from you soon.
All right. Have a good one.
Have a good one. Bye.